Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt Don't Play, and I know what you're all thinking. This map looks incredibly real. Well, that's because it is. So I'm back today for one of my real life farm builds. So let's get started. The beginning of any new farm build needs a good map. And my favorite map is Griffin, Indiana. And I'm not going to let the fact that the real life farm that I'm copying is nowhere near Indiana. And I've been struggling to find the perfect map for this farm build because the characteristics of the real life farm had to be right. And then out of nowhere, one of my awesome subscribers commented saying they always thought Field 25 was a perfect spot for a farm. It was almost like he knew I was trying to build this farm. The curves in the road matched, and I started building. While the farm itself doesn't live on Field 25, it was just the suggestion I needed to get this real-life farm build off the ground. You guys know I always start with the farmhouse, so that's where we're going to begin, with this one right here. And this farm's a little different. All the angles and everything's off kilter. It's really messing with my OCD. And it took me a couple times to get this farm right. The sheer size of this farm was something I wanted to get right. No in-game garden or greenhouse was gonna do, so I built my own. And when 30 plus kids have grown up on this farm over the last 120 years, it makes sense why it's so big. And yes, you heard that correctly, 120 years. Actually, in 2003, this farm was designated as a century farm, and the same family continues to farm it to this day. Now let's add some livestock to this farm. On this side of the house was a nice large pig barn. And this one just happened to have 5 pins, just like the one in real life. Couldn't have worked out better. And I think it fits the space that's there in real life. So this is one of those areas where I had to compromise and go more for look over function. All the dairy barn mods that I had were just too big, or the fences were in the wrong place. I just couldn't make it work in my head to use those. So I went with this hay shed instead, just to get the look and the feel, which to me is more important in these real life farm builds. And that's the great part about this game. If this is a build that you would like to play on your own, you're more than welcome to change it up however you see fit to play this build, however you want to. This is just that friendly reminder, hit that subscribe button for me and turn on that notification bell so you know when all my videos are coming out. Got a couple new builds in the works, as well as maybe a strange series that I've got planned. Another reason why this was the perfect time to build this farm, a day after I started this farm, the Welker Farms building pack came out. And until then, I just didn't have a good substitute for this building. So when I saw DJ Goham's review of that mod and saw that building, I knew it was exactly what I needed to finish this build off right and not have any weird substitutes to make up for it, like one of those beet/potato storage sheds. Ugh. Sorry to you beet and potato farmers out there. That's just not for me. Now onto the beef cattle pasture. I really wanted to get this one right. This area has a ton of character and I wanted to make sure I captured all of it. But of course, with all my builds, I jump around all the time. So some of the character gets added later. So stick around and see what that is. Oh man, this is about where I screwed up the whole video and had to restart. But I used the tools available to me and fixed it. And you can too. As you can see, when I used the slope tool, it just created too much of an edge. So I went back, raised up the land to where I wanted it, smoothed it out, made it much easier to drive in and out of. It's still not perfect, but I'm just glad I didn't give up on it and have to restart this whole build. Definitely getting better at just rolling with the punches and fixing screw-ups instead of starting over. I call that growth. So let's continue building out this cattle pasture. Let's get some fences put in. If we want to, we can come back later, create new fields, but that's for another video. This is a farm build, not a field build. A trick I've told you all before, but just want to tell you again, use your buildings as a straight edge. It'll keep your fences somewhat straight. If you've gone too far, if it's causing a collision, just back it off a bit. Once the warning clears, you know you're pretty much straight. Tack her down and move on to the next. So while I'm doing some landscaping, I thought now would be the perfect time to give a little history lesson on this century farm. This 200-acre farm was purchased in 1903. The house is 4 bedrooms and 1.5 baths. Can you imagine raising all those kids with 1.5 bathrooms? And yes, before you comment, most of that time frame, it was probably an outhouse. Whew, just think about that. In 1950, the 3rd generation bought the farm from his father for $25,000, along with 80 additional acres. If you were to purchase that today, it'd be well over $1 million. Also, in 1950, electricity was ran to the farm so it could be connected to the power grid. Kind of hard to imagine a farm not being connected to power nowadays, but that's how rural life was back then. The farm was largely a livestock farm. They raised pigs, cattle, and chickens, used some of the cows for milk, but only for family use. And when they sold the pigs at market, they would drive them by hand up the valley to the train station where they could be loaded up and shipped out. Now that's old school. Speaking of old school, they didn't even use tractors until 1946. Everything before that was all done by a team of horses. And let's not forget about the chickens. They used to raise about 200 to 300 baby chicks each spring. Nearly half of those chickens was butchered for food for the family, and the rest all kept to lay eggs. That's like having a gold mine in your backyard. 200 chickens producing tiny golden nuggets every day. Can't go wrong there. Also on the farm was a large orchard, mainly of apple trees, and also that huge garden that I built earlier. Then, in 1992, the 4th generation took over the farm. He rented it until he was able to purchase it, and he still runs the farm today. They currently run beef cows on it the majority of the time, and they also have a few fields for corn and soybeans. Like I said before, the state fair in 2003 designated this farm as a century farm. If you've never heard of this before, the name kind of gives it away, but it's a farm that the same family has owned for over 100 years and has kept at least 40 acres of it the entire time. That's a pretty cool accomplishment, and sounds like they have no plans of giving that up anytime soon. Sounds like they're heading towards heritage farm territory, but that's for another video. What's cool about this farm is the past generations stayed working on the farm until they couldn't do so anymore, or till they passed away. One of the generations stayed working on the farm till his late 90s. That's pretty cool. And he was so proud of the farm he had built, he'd take anyone who asked on a hayride around the farm to show it off. The one thing about this farm that I'll never be able to replicate is just how hilly and rocky it is. Take this cow pasture, for example. In real life, there's several huge mounds of rocks that are just sitting out in the middle of it. And the Placeable Objects pack had the rocks I needed to create the exact look I was going for in this pasture. Not sure if they were designed to do this, but they stacked just perfectly to look like a natural rock formation peeking up out of the ground. That random fence in the pasture, I promise you don't see it. neither does the gain. For some reason, it just keeps it there. It's actually not there in real life. As soon as I do a restart, it goes away. As always, gotta add my cattle runs in the grass pasture. Always looking for those tiny little details that make this feel real. For those of you wondering where I've been, April and May are my busiest months at my real job, and I just didn't have anything recorded ahead of time that I could edit and get out. So, it's been a couple months since my last video. Glad to see most of you haven't left. You're all still here. I appreciate that. I'll definitely do better about getting stuff out, hopefully weekly, but I do have a job and an awesome family that I like to spend time with. So I just fit these videos in when I can, but I do want to be better about it and get more consistent. I hope you guys like these real life farm builds as much as I do. It's a fun challenge to take these real life farms with the mods available and see how close I can get to the real thing. If you've made it this far, probably means you like this video. So do me a favor, smash that like button. Not only for me, but for the other YouTube creators you enjoy also. It's an easy and simple gesture on your part, but it's a big deal for all us small channels, and lets YouTube know you like what we're doing and you want to see more of it. So after you watch this video, hopefully all the way to the end, go find a couple other YouTube creators you like, and like a few of their videos as well. Let's share the wealth. Yep, I know I covered up the auger for the pig pen, but I was going more for the look instead of the function, and if you notice closely, I did leave a decent gap between the trees so you could back a trailer up to the auger, and so you wouldn't have to use a chainsaw and have a stump there in the future. So I hope that helps. No build of mine would be complete without taking a quick drive around the farm to see it from ground level. And you may have noticed I'm not driving the retriever this time, but more on that later. Here's the farmyard, 2 big silos here, and we'll take this gravel drive to the Quonset hut for cold storage. You may have noticed I didn't create new fields or add large pasture areas, and we can turn those areas into anything we want later. Heading back towards the main part of the farm, as you can see, we're heading towards the dairy barn. Not really a dairy barn by the looks of it, but it's taking the place of one right now. Big open area for all the cattle once we get them, and a nice big shed for hay storage or for the cows to get out of the sun. I was really worried this area through here would not be wide enough, but it actually turned out wider than I thought, and I'm really happy with it. Except I have to prove myself wrong and hit the fence post as I'm turning around. I don't think that says anything about my farm building abilities, just my driving. You've waited long enough. Why in the world would I drive a bus around the farm instead of Retriever? The current farmer that lives here, well, he drives a bus on the side, and it caught my eye as soon as I saw the picture for this farm, and there was no way I was not going to add it to this build. And there it is, in its proper place on the farm. Well, it's time for everyone's favorite part of the builds, the flyover. So let's check this farm out from a bird's eye view as we fly quickly to the end. Get it? Fly? Anyway, really like how this farm turned out. It's a big, huge farm. May not make sense at first, but after it's all put together, everything fits really well. Sometimes, random is just how it's supposed to be, and this farm is no different. So that about does it for this build. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel, hit that like button, share this video with friends and family, leave a comment on this video and all my videos. Let me know how I'm doing, and if you're looking to support the channel, scan those QR codes above. It's just that easy. Well, I guess I need to be going now. Until next time, I'm Matt Don't Play.